Welcome to Getting Defensive Weekend Primer presented by Gridiron Ratings. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and tonight we take a look at the Week 8 matchups and all the news you need. With me tonight is Gridiron Ratings senior IDP analyst. You can find him on Twitter at the IDP Tipster, Gary Van Dyke. How you doing, Gary?
I'm doing real good, JJ. Ready to rock and roll with you and Tripp on this matchups this weekend.
Man, I am so excited. And look who's here. Our returning champion, 8 weeks in a row. You can find him on Twitter at Dynasty Tripp Brebner. How you doing, man?
Doing well, man. I don't feel like a champion after last week. There were some frightening starting lineup decisions going into week 7, and it's Halloween, so hopefully it'll be a little less scary this week.
Well, if you want to hear a scary story, in a Superflex league, I started Justin Fields and Sam Darnold at QB, and they got me a combined -6 points.
Okay, I might not have you. I had Geno and Keenum in one league, man.
You beat me. You would have beat me.
But I got positive points. That's right.
Oh, did better off leaving them? Oh, whatever. What? We're not starting off with the dirty O. We're not starting off this way. I'm sorry, Gary. We're going to jump right back into the show. Gentlemen, we might as well just get to it. Starting with tonight's game. I know we don't have any time to change our lineups. J.J. Watt is out for the season after shoulder surgery. Now, he's going to be 33 before next year. Should he remain on our rosters? Tripp?
Dynasty rosters, yeah. Yeah, because here's part of the thing is that he's been playing more interior snaps this year. And so what we may see next year, if it's depending on what platform folks play, I play a lot of myfantasyfootleague.com. And on that platform, they're talking about changing to a true position situation. And if J.J. Watt is changed to an interior defender or defensive tackle on that platform, then that's pretty interesting. I mean, he plays, good mix of both. And I saw somebody post something a week or two ago that he had the third most quarterback pressures according to Pro Football Focus of any interior defensive lineman, and they classify him as that. So I'm holding on to him if I got him. He's certainly not the player he used to be, but that's an interesting change for me.
What about you, Gary? Are you still on board with rostering him in dynasty leagues?
I mean, if I got a deep one and can hold on to him, yeah, in dynasty, I'm not. I mean, I see what Tripp's getting at, and he probably has another good year left in him, but I'm probably not sticking my claim in him any longer if I've got better options of some type or work on another future guy. How many sacks has he had this year? I think that's
one.
Yeah, that hurts. That hurts. But as an interior defensive lineman, especially if you can get him as a DT play, if that's possible in some formats.
All right, so I'm gonna put him on my IR. I'll let him sit. I'm gonna trust both of you, gentlemen. There just was an injury. Zaven Collins went out with a shoulder injury. Looks like he was finally getting some playing time and he got hurt. Is this what we can expect from him, or do we think that it's just going to take a little while to acclimate himself?
This rookie, go ahead, Tripp.
It reminds me of last year with Isaiah Simmons, right? I mean, it took him a while to get on the field. I'm not 100% sure why. Totally different narrative out of Arizona this year with Zaven Collins. It seemed like he was going to start, and then he just didn't. Who knows? But I mean, the injury just slows down. Him taking over, Jamin Davis just took over with 98% of the snaps last weekend. So I think you got to give Collins time. He's that kind of your proverbial, to use an offensive analogy, a proverbial RB handcuff, and that he could eventually take over the role the same way Javonte Williams could and be a league winner down the stretch. So I'd hold on to him if I got the depth to do it.
All right, well, let's move on to the early games for Sunday. Carolina at Atlanta. Now, I was tempted to let Gary try to pronounce the fresh-faced defensive end in Atlanta, but I didn't want his wife to have to call 911. So I will say it for you. Ide Tukumbo Ogundeji. I practiced Ogundeji. He's been playing more and more snaps every week. Is it time to roster him, Tripp?
Who?
Ogundeji.
Right. Yeah, I've picked him up in my leagues. He's got defensive end eligibility, which is kind of attractive. So any league where you're fighting that scarcity situation, you go out and grab that guy. I don't hate his matchup this week either with Carolina. You got Sam Darnold back there. He doesn't need Halloween to see ghosts. He sees them all the time. He's out there getting chased around by pass rushers. So I'm okay. I'm okay with the idea of a deeper league of starting him, especially if you need like a third DE for some reason. I mean, he's in the mix in a deeper league for me. So it's an interesting player, a rookie. He's getting playing time because they won't have anything else. Dante Fowler's an IR. Steven Means is like 9 career sacks or some nonsense. He's 30 something. So, but a rookie earns playing time. You got to pay attention. I mean, he's here earning playing time faster than Richie Grant is. And Richie Grant was a 2nd round pick.
Now, Gary, are you going to avoid him just because of his name, or might you pick him up as well?
I got my eyes on him. I had some others that I liked. So, he's on the radar, I've already got like so many other little deep ones that I've already picked up. I was able to stack up some rosters over the last couple of days because people have made some drops. Really helped me in the tail end of things, I think, for the next few weeks, at least in IDP terms. But I'm keeping an eye on him. I'll tell you, Grady Jarrett is, he's a really good play this week, folks. So, this is one of those players. He's really only lived up to the matchup in that interior defensive line. I believe the Carolina gives up quite a bit. So he is not going to get you any sacks, but I definitely, if you've got a designated DT, if you're looking and you're in a deep league, hopefully the buys aren't hitting you as bad this week. But he is a viable play. He'll probably end up with I'm going to give him a ceiling of about 4 or 5 combined tackles.
Now, on the other side of the ball, Brian Burns has been playing great for Carolina, posting his 4th sack of the year against the Giants. Now, he is consistently pressuring the QB. Should he be considered a top 10 defensive end moving forward? Top 10 edge player? Gary?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's definitely he's been out playing his matchups. That's the impressive thing. That's when I do my rolling waiver wire charts. And I look at these MSRs as I track them for at least 3 weeks minimal. And if there's one thing to have a guy that every time he's got a top 10 matchup, that he succeeds, because that's consistency. So that helps you. But if there's like a low end or middle and not so favorable matchup, and he still succeeds, that means something, because there's a lot of players out there that'll drop off and on waiver wires and such that are serviceable at the right time because their matchup is right. They don't necessarily overachieve in poor matchups. If you can find somebody like Burns has been doing and overachieving plus getting what he's getting, oh yeah, he's definitely a top 10 guy. I mean, I believe he'll end the year nicely that way.
Now, Tripp, Jeremy Chin has been a bit of a disappointment as he registered only 1 splash play this year, fumble recovery in 7 games. No sacks, only 3 QB hits, no INTs. Tripp, should I still believe in Chin?
Well, Chin's an interesting character in that he's got the same number of tackles as Sean Chandler, who's the starting free safety. And Chandler didn't start starting until Justin Burris got hurt. So he's certainly lagging expectations. But they got a week here against Atlanta where they're giving up a ton of points to the safety position. You got Kyle Pitts out there, Hayden Hurst, and I think it's an attractive matchup for him. And I'm not terribly worried about his utilization. It's not as good as it was last year, but it's still favorable for safety. And so I'm confident that Chin will pick it up here and move up the scoring ranks, if you will. And so this is a good week to start for him to do that. And so, yeah, I'd confidently roll him out there this week, despite the lackluster production today.
I believe that Justin Burris might be coming back this week. So if you guys are looking toward Chandler, I'd be checking Burris's status because, like Tripp pointed out, Burris or Chandler only played because Burris went to IR. So, and they do like him. So just keep your eye on that.
Now going up to Miami, Dolphins visiting Buffalo. Buzzsaw in Buffalo, man. They're looking to avenge their loss to the Titans. Now, Miami linebacker Jerome Baker really let me down last week. Tripp, what the hell happened?
Well, he got banged up, and so and got replaced as a result. And they brought in the former CFL man Sam Eguavoen, and Eguavoen did okay, but Baker, from what I've seen, is looking to come back this week, and it's a reasonably attractive matchup against the Bills. The Bills play a high pace, and Baker's their really only he's their only full-time linebacker, and so I like him to get out there and rebound this week, and I think he'll be fine. So I think folks are a little down on him. His production has not been what it was last year. He had like 7 sacks or something, and he hasn't really had that. The defense hasn't been as good, and so the opportunities for big plays haven't been there. But just from a sheer attack on linebacker situation, I like him fine.
Now going to San Francisco versus the Bears. Javon Kinlaw may need season-ending surgery. He had a disappointing rookie year, now a shortened sophomore season. Here's my question for you, Gary. What is the breakout window for a defensive tackle? And what I mean is, like, wide receivers, you generally know by year 3. Tight ends, you can see them break out in years 4 or 5. If a defensive tackle doesn't break out in his first 2 years, should we be worried?
Yeah, a little bit. I think so. I expect the first 3 years at least, to see something. Yeah, you do have late bloomers, but that usually, believe it or not, late bloomers will happen more with defensive ends than interior defensive linemen. So, Kinlaw's role too. I mean, the position he was playing, I don't think it necessarily. I don't know what technique he was playing, but apparently is not giving him too much opportunities. I remember we had a conversation before the season with Johnny the Greek, which will probably be joining us next week, folks. But either way, Johnny the Greek, we were talking about Derek Brown and Kinlaw, and we both guessed that it would be Kinlaw that would be the better of the two, based on what positions in the line that we thought they were going to be playing. We were incorrect, folks. So Derek Brown has definitely been the better producer. And Kinlaw, whether he's always nicked up or if maybe that's something to do with it, I'm not really sure. Maybe Tripp's got something on that.
Yeah, he's spent a good amount of time nicked up. To me, the answer between the two of those so far has really been none of the above. So, with respect to utilization, with respect to the utilization, Kinlaw is a guy that came in with a tremendous athleticism, but was a raw player. So he dominated at the Senior Bowl because he had superior athleticism and was really able to control offensive linemen across from him. Well, we know that doesn't happen in the NFL. It almost doesn't matter who you are. You come in and you meet your matches in the NFL. And so Kinlaw, it was known that he had a ways to go in terms of development on technique and whatnot, which is really kind of almost polar opposite of DeForest Buckner, the man he was drafted to replace. Buckner came in without the incredibly high athletic upside, but he had the pass rush techniques. He was way ahead of his time with that respect. And because of that, Buckner played a dedicated interior pass rusher, free technique role every down, and they always played a nose tackle next to him, whether it was DJ Jones or Sheldon Day. When they bring in Kinlaw, he does a couple things. One is that he doesn't have that kind of natural, without that technique down, he doesn't have that just plug and play at the interior pass rusher role at 3 technique position, but he does give them flexibility to kind of alternate with the nose tackles that they have. And DJ Jones isn't a terrible player, and so they've kind of mixed him up a little bit. And more teams are doing this. And this is what Fletcher Cox is griping about in Philadelphia, is he's unhappy not being that full-time through 3 technique interior penetrator, getting disruptor. And so Kinlaw isn't playing that role because he's really not ready for it. The question is when he develops some pass rush moves, when he stays healthy enough to do it, does he take on more of that role? Is he the guy that's designated to get upfield? Or is he going to be responsible for eating 2 blockers so that Armstead or Bosa can come around his backside? And so it's hard to know that at this point, but I mean, he's played 20 total games in his career, maybe fewer than that because of injury. So I'm willing to give that guy a little bit more time. I think that from just the size, athleticism, speed, agility standpoint, you got to stick with a guy like that. So, you look at Armstead, and Armstead was probably more similar to Kinlaw than Buckner was coming in. And Armstead really broke out in his fourth year, and he hasn't been great, I realize, since then. But that to me, I would be patient with him and see what happens going into year three if Kinlaw misses the rest of this year. But yeah, it's fair to be concerned. You get draft a guy 15th overall, it's because you expect him to come in and be an impact player right away.
Now, are we starting anybody on the 49ers against this terrible Bears offense? Gary?
Just the normals, just Fred Warner, Al-Ashir, or whatever it is, the other, they should be solid. Fred Warner, if I remember right, their matchup on paper is it's not super great, but it is Fred Warner, so you're probably going to get his, decent, and then Al-Ashir should be very serviceable. Boza, this is a really nice one for Nick. Rest of that, I think they got a new safety starting. We're going to watch and see what he does. What do you think, Tripp?
Yeah, I would go ahead and start Armstead. I know he's your deeper league guy. I know he hasn't been great.
The matchup's there.
Yeah, Fields is eating the ball. I'd be comfortable with him in spots. The safety conversation is really interesting because the 49ers have been tinkering around with deployment there, and it'd be interesting to see if Hufanga, who came in as kind of a limited prototype box player type, is going to play that with Jimmy Ward deep, or if he really does alternate more with Ward and play more too deep. And I'm curious to see that deployment. I think that's pretty interesting storyline to follow for those who like to pick up their safeties cheap, which is me.
Which is most of us. Now, with Khalil Mack just finishing up with the Bears, he's doubtful yet again for another week. Is he coming back this year?
I think he probably comes back this year, but he's just been playing through injury. He was just too banged up to compete last week. And so there's talk about him going on IR, and certainly looks like he's going to take a week off this week. But it's just disappointing. He's such a good player. You hate to see guys not being able to perform because they're that limited.
Especially if they're not at the top of their ability. I guess maybe in a 17-game season, taking a short sabbatical on IR might be the best move for some of these veteran players.
Think about it this way. There's still like 11 weeks left in the NFL season. It feels like we've been at it for a while now. We don't know.
Were you going to say something, Gary?
I was just going to say, it's like, why would you have Mack out there, a superstar on your team, when you're not really competing to begin with? And he's not going to make the difference if you're competing or if you are. So, because it's more of offensive problems. If I want to talk dirty for a minute, but I really don't want to. I just don't think that all of a sudden they're going to start throwing for 500 yards and rushing for 2 touchdowns each contest. So I don't see that turnaround on that offense right away.
Definitely not with Matt Nagy in the house. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns. Now, NFL Network, Aditi Kinkhabwala reports that the Chiefs made an offer for Melvin Ingram. The Steelers said no because they want to trade him out of the division. How did this go so bad so quickly for Melvin Ingram in Pittsburgh? Gary?
This is I'm gonna defer to Tripp if he's got this one.
I think Ingram is okay. It's a weird storyline, right? He's not quite as the player he used to be. He's still a functional NFL player. He goes out there for Pittsburgh, and it's the same as the Chargers last year, where he's just, for some reason, not quite getting home and not quite producing. But if the folks that track the advanced metrics and whatnot, they say he's winning his matchup. So, I watch him play, and I remember when he played at USC a long time ago, and I remember thinking this is just a man among boys. He's playing my Clemson Tigers, and so he's not the same player they used to be. But it's a challenging thing. But with respect to the Chiefs, I think there was conversation that the Chiefs would sign him in the offseason, and they just didn't for some reason. I think they're regretting it because whatever they're trotting out there now is still not as good as Melvin Ingram.
No, definitely not as good. Now, on the other side of the ball, Garrett and Clowney have been destroying QBs with 13 combined sacks so far this year. With the cement-shoed Roethlisberger visiting, Do they feast, Gary?
I think that Garrett gets in there a couple times, and Clowney possibly can too. I just feel good that I had Clowney up higher in my preseason rankings than a lot of people. It's one of the few things that's worked out is he's actually. I was getting him cheap in redrafts and deep redrafts, but I was getting him cheap, getting him well above where his ADP is at the moment, what his value versus that is. So yeah, they'll have a good time, but it's going to be a really tough game when we consider that Cleveland offensive line versus Watt and Hayward and even Wormley. I think Wormley for Pittsburgh is going to actually stack up a few nice little points. I give him about the same type of ceiling that I did Grady Jarrett with. I would say 3 to 4, 4 to 5 combined tackles is not out of the question. Cleveland loves to run that ball. They're going to continue to run that ball.
Now, do we know if Baker Mayfield is playing this weekend?
Hadn't heard.
Yeah, I think it's still jury's still out. It seems like that's the bet, but it seems like there's some reasonable chance that Keenan stays out there again.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Now, Philly is visiting the Detroit Lions. Now, if I want to be frustrated in my life, I do a couple things. I either draft a Chargers linebacker or New England running back, right? Like if I just want to hurt myself. Well, I've learned this year that I'm going to add Philly linebacker to my choices for frustrating. Gary, what the holy hell is going on with these linebackers in Philly? Can they pick one?
Yeah, it is. You're exactly right. It's just like the frustrating with the Chargers and stuff. Philadelphia's pretty much been like that for a while too. If you're an Alex Singleton fan right now, you should be really nervous because he dropped all the way to 50% of the snaps last week when you've been playing 100% and producing well. But technically, folks, from what I read or seen in reports, is they're not happy with his play on the field. He's actually really hurting in coverage. And Eric Wilson's, which I wasn't on his bandwagon I wasn't that excited when he went to Philadelphia because he actually graded out poorly in Minnesota last year. But he is in the same boat. He turned around, he's only played like 33%. Who's coming up is that Taylor, Donovan Taylor. He's second year guy.
Davion Taylor, yes.
Davion Taylor, yes. He's actually came up slowly and he had a nice jump. He still only played 50% of the snaps last week. But it's still they're not super happy with his coverage either, but they're trying to find some kind of combination. They definitely are messing around. I'd be nervous this week with Detroit a little bit, but I mean when you look at the numbers, Detroit is one of the bigger teams giving away points to the linebacker position. So you've got to kind of just don't think of Alex Singleton as your top 2 play. Think of him as a top 3 play to play it safe this week if you've got to. If you can avoid him because you still have somebody else, he'll probably still get you some solid numbers. But I would be nervous because if you get the same snaps that you had last week versus Detroit this week, it can matter, especially if you've been getting those LB1 numbers out of Singleton that you've been expecting. In 215
coverage snaps, PFF has him rated at 38. 38.
That is beyond poor.
Yeah, easily the worst of all the Eagles linebackers who qualify. Davion Taylor out of Colorado, right, Tripp?
Yes, sir.
Now, he was the guy who never really played in a game because of his religion, correct?
Right. Seventh-day Adventist, and so he couldn't take the field on Friday nights for high school. And so gets into college, very raw athlete-type player. He played kind of an apex role, a little bit like JOK and in college, and so not really ready to play linebacker in the NFL. And so clearly a project. Overdrafted in the 3rd round by the Eagles, but an interesting prospect. And so a guy that's kind of, if you're in a deep enough league, and I'm in 1 or 2 where that might be worth waiting on your roster, and you taxi him and see what you got. And his playing time has just kind of gradually but steadily ticked up. And I think they're coming to the conclusion that Eric Wilson, the free agent signee out of Minnesota, is not really the answer at linebacker. And so his time is gradually ticking down. So it's not as herky-jerky as the Chargers linebacker situation has been the last couple of years. And so I think it's worth tracking. I mean, certainly Wilson's cuttable. Singleton has been efficient in limited time, so worth playing. And then Taylor is kind of the guy that's worth holding to see what you got if you got the roster space for him.
Now, the Rams are visiting the hapless Texans. Do they shock the world with Tyrod Taylor coming off of IR? Gary? No. I'm going to Gary. Gary, the sad trombone.
Yeah, no,
trombone with the goatee.
I just, oh man, what?
No, they don't shock the world.
Why is it me? No.
It's not going to happen. I was just trying to set you up for a nice little spike.
No.
But hey, question from a listener, Jacob Weinmelt, asks, is this Ernest Jones season? What do we think about him? Kenny Young's gone, right? From LA?
A lot of Gridiron Ratings members and a lot of people out there in Twitterverse, they're going to know. I actually, I loved Ernest Jones coming out. I drafted him in almost every one of my drafts this past year. At the tail end, I was actually drafting him over. I'd drop. I wouldn't take any of the high rookies if I did have those types of picks. So I was catching him kind of late. He finally looks like he's going to get a chance to play. I mean, this weekend, I would hope to see something along the lines of 30 to 40% of the snaps would be great for his first. He might not even start. He might not even be on the field to begin with. With Troy Reader is probably definitely the guy this weekend. I just, they're probably going to ease him in. They have not rushed him in yet, so I don't see that happening just in a game this weekend. I like him going forward. I think that it is very possible that if he gets on the field and if he can perform and live up to the third round selection, that I think he could be a viable player for the rest of the year.
Well, like the early 80s sitcom, if my one dad says no, I'll go to my other dad. Tripp, should I start Ernest Jones?
Well, not this week, man. We got to see what we got here. Reader played 81% of the snaps last week. They seem to trust him, knowing he's a limited player, knowing they got to be careful not to put him in spots to fail. But I think it's like the same argument with Jimmy Davis or Zaven Collins, right? You just got to give it time, see what happens with it. And I think by mid-year, by Thanksgiving or so, I think we start to see him start to emerge. You hear the coach speak and they say, well, they expect him to take over. Well, coaches aren't necessarily thinking this year when they say, I don't think. I mean, it's hard to know for sure, but so I would wait to see it before I started him. You can find somebody on the waiver wire in most leagues.
Preach it. Wait and see, folks. Make these guys earn it when they come on. A lot of these, with some of them we know, we don't know this guy. We don't know squat about this guy. He has not seen any significant playing time whatsoever. And he's just getting the great opportunity coming up real soon. Now let's see what he does with it.
Man, the players I manage on my rosters work so hard to get those roles. You're absolutely right. I'm going to make somebody earn it before I boot one of my hardworking players off. Now, speaking of a hardworking player, Jonathan Greenard has been blowing up QBs, logging 6 sacks in 5 games. Now, I'm a reactionary football fan, so Tripp, he's guaranteed for a sack this week, right?
I'm sorry, which player?
Jonathan Greenard.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Who do they have?
Yeah, 5 sacks in 3 games, playing 55% snap share. Now he's got the friggin' Rams. I mean, the Rams give up like 1 sack a game.
Yes.
Maybe, let's hope, cross our fingers and hope the streak continues. But you can't.
I had it in my start sits, man. I felt so bad because I was like, they're just not going to believe me. I'm like marking it just serviceable. You can't play them, in my opinion. I mean, like you just said, they are bottom of the rung when it comes to letting anything come off the edge. And I think there's too many other viable plays out there that I would rather go with that would be safer than to think. I don't think he gets in the backfield. I don't think he gets a sack this game. I think his streak's over. There's that IDP wall matchup.
Listen, it happens.
Hey, I'm also sitting Matt Judon where if I had him or where I have him. Cameron Jordan. I'm sitting Cameron Jordan this week. I don't like against Tampa Bay whatsoever. You know, he hasn't been able to really get it done anyway, so don't go reaching this weekend for him.
Well, looking at the Tennessee Titans versus the Indianapolis Colts now, this features the number 2 and number 7 rushing offenses in the league. It would seem that we should start all linebackers on both sides. Am I reading these tea leaves correctly, Gary?
Yes. I definitely, I even think Rashawn Evans could end up with low end linebacker 1 type numbers, just probably in base tackles. Don't expect anything extra out of him unless he might slip in there and get a sack for you. But I love him. The rest of them, Okereke, Leonard, Long. I like Long. Yeah, I like them all.
I like them all. Tripp, you're on board?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. All right, let's go to the Cincinnati Bengals visiting the New York Jets. Now, the Bengals are arriving a big wave of momentum as they crashed in New York this weekend with either Mike White or Joe Flacco starting for the Jets. Yay. Does this defense ring up impressive stats this week? Like, will there be like 8 sacks by Cincinnati?
Yeah. This is definitely, you know, you're talking team defense. That's got to be the number 1 option this week if we were playing that, right?
In IDP, are we playing all positions though? I mean, you got to figure cornerbacks are going to get interceptions.
I don't know what you're going to do with your cornerback. I don't know. I don't. Are they going to be able to throw down the ball down the field to begin with? Are they going to have enough downs to make enough attempts downfield to begin with? I kind of worry about that.
They don't even have to be good attempts. I mean,
so maybe not the Bengals secondary, but I mean, how can you not start Von Bell and Jesse Bates? I mean, but I don't know about the rest of the defensive backs. I might kind of shy from them.
So for the record, do you remember a few short weeks ago, maybe a month and a half, 2 months, how happy I was about the Jets season?
We were happy for you.
Do you see the defeated, slouched shoulders?
What is the curse up there? There's just a curse, man.
Tripp,
well, the Rex Ryan hangover curse or something. I don't know.
It's all because of Joe Namath trying to kiss Susie Colbert.
Probably. I've heard that.
Damn old drunk.
I've heard
Tripp,
that.
who are we firing up against the Jets?
I kind of like Cheeto Awuzie, who's the starting cornerback and number 1 guy for the Bengals because he's going to be locked up with Corey Davis. And Awuzie has a pass defense, at least 1, if not more, almost every week he's been out there. He's got, it looks like Mike White going. What I've read is that because of COVID protocols, that Flacco can't get into the room with the team until Friday or Saturday, and so he's not going to be able to be ready to start. Putting Mike White out there. Like what Gary said is that they could be a real conservative game plan with a slow, small snap counts, whatnot. But what we saw last week with White relief is they still played a pretty high number of snaps, and they had a disproportionately high number of pass attempts relative to rushing attempts. Why would you do that to Mike White? But that's been the case all year. They're playing, high pass run ratio. And so I can't guarantee that game script will happen, but it's attractive enough that I'd be trying to Uzi out there to see what I get, especially without interception upside. That's what I like too, because you almost guarantee this guy's going to throw a pick. It's just who catches it.
Anybody on the Jets we should be firing up? JFM?
You're going to be busy. You're going to be tired. I mean, you got Mosley and Jared Davis has finally come off IR. They're all practicing, I guess, so they look like they might be on track to play this weekend. I definitely, folks, I love Jared Davis and breakout call of mine. Don't play him this weekend if you're going to grab him, stash him. It depends on the size of the league or something, but don't expect him to be in there. The guy's not played any ball yet because he got hurt, I believe, preseason? So don't go looking for Jared Davis to do anything, be a popular pickup in standard size leagues for another couple of weeks. But I mean, mostly he's going to be busy if he's healthy. If they put him in there playing, if they put any other linebackers in there, I don't know who they would be to even guess. You would have to be watching the game to say, all right, this is who we're starting, and didn't run in and put them in your lineups. I wouldn't even worry about it. Marcus May should be pretty busy. I would think the cumulative Quincy. Well, what do you think of Quincy Williams, Tripp? I think he might be a good start.
They rolled out some guy named Delshawn Phillips ahead of him last week. I'm pretty sure. I mean, Delshawn was piling up numbers. I can't remember the snap counts, but man, if Jared Davis and Moses are both healthy, then they're obvious plays. And if Delshawn Phillips is actually in the mix, then it's like. Yeah.
So you trust Jared Davis to play him this week over?
If Jared Davis is active, yeah, I mean it's a risk, but if he's active, I'd go ahead and play him.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's touch on the afternoon games. New England is visiting the Chargers. Now, I hate every game involving the Patriots because of two reasons. One, I never know who they're going to play on offense or defense. And two, because of the previous fact, I never know who to play on the other team. I don't know who to play on defense because I don't know what kind of offense the Patriots are going to roll out. Now, help me out here. What should I play against the Patriots? So if I'm a Charger defensive team, who should I be starting on IDP? Gary, who do you have on your ranks?
Well, I mean, I believe they're one of the top teams. I believe they're one of the top teams that's allowing points to the safety position. So let me verify that. Oh, yeah, they're top 5. So, I mean, you got Duger. You can probably get away with. Here's the problem with the Patriots safeties. Is technically this year the only one that's been doing anything worth anything is Duger, which is great. But usually we should have at least another guy. I don't get me wrong, I love Adrian Phillips still, but I mean he's not producing either. I mean he's a little bit older guy. I think he's more standing back directing traffic or something. He's not getting as many snaps as Cougar is, or what's his name?
Kyle Duggar.
Duggar. McCourtney, I mean he can be serviceable, but even when the matchups are
Tripp, who are you starting in this matchup?
Well, I like J.C. Jackson, the cornerback. I think he's got, really high. I mean, he's already like a top 10 cornerback in terms of scoring, and comes into a matchup here with a pass-happy Chargers and an up-tempo offense, and he's going to be facing Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. I like the looks of him in this matchup too. And if I'm looking in deeper leagues where I need, I think, say a third cornerback, I don't hate the idea of going to Jalen Mills and seeing who's make sure he's healthy and playing him. They had Miles Bryant last week piled up snaps. He gets elevated to the practice squad and put up a big stat line. So I think that something like that happens again. That's obviously a gamble as to who it's going to be. But J.C. Jackson is an easy play for me on the start side of things. And Gary mentioned the Chargers safety as well. Needless to say, my man Derwin James needs to be on the lineups.
Absolutely. Now, Jacksonville Jaguars are going to Seattle with Geno Smith holding the ball longer than I hold a grudge, which is a long time. Can we expect even Jacksonville to ring up some sacks this weekend, Tripp?
I think so, man. We got, it won't be a ton of pass attempts, but so Geno was awesome last week, right? 167 yards and 84 of them were on a play where DK Metcalf just mossed a guy around in the end zone. It's like, gosh, Geno, it's so rough. Well, I think a lot of people had high hopes after his fourth quarter showing in the first game that he played.
I was going up against Lockett in so many leagues. I was sitting there looking at that, thinking, "Oh, come on, man," because it's either going to make or break me. I had Metcalf in a couple, so I got a little extra help.
I got a lot of Lockett, and because of the freaking, the buys and the injuries and whatnot, I couldn't bench him. I just hated it.
Yeah. I didn't get too many shares of him this year.
But yeah, this coming around here, I like, Josh Allen and Caleb on Jason have both picked it up in the last couple of weeks, and they look better. The whole team really has been more competitive the last couple of weeks, and that's just a rising tide situation. Allen is the good player out of those two. Jason is out there, so obviously you want to start Allen, and if you're out in a spot where you need that deeper guy, then Jason is. I don't hate putting him out there with it too to get after Geno.
Now, going to the Washington football team at the Denver Broncos, Gary, you talked about Kenny Young trade on Tuesday. Can I fire him up this week?
Oh, no. It'd be just the same thing as like Jared Davis, in my opinion. I mean, he's going to have a week here. He could probably learn some of their playbooks and their calls pretty quickly. They can actually help him. You got Jackson out there playing strong safety. You can probably help him get lined up. But in my opinion, no. I mean, we only have 2 weeks, two teams on bye this week. There should be plenty of meat out there. Like on that opposite side of the ball, I would try to get Davion Wilson should be a solid play. Even if Miles Jack does play, I still like Wilson for the fact is that he should be wearing the green dot now and on the field the most. So, no, I'm not messing around.
Now, Tripp, with Teddy B holding the ball almost as long as Geno Smith, should we fire up anyone on the Washington football team's line? I mean, Chase Young's an obvious must start. Yeah. Even though he only has 1.5 sacks this season.
Yeah, he's playing well. I was talking about it on the IDP show podcast a couple nights ago, and then mixing it up on Twitter a little bit, talking about that too. Is just he's not playing for it. It's not why his stats are down. The situation is totally different. Football team isn't covering anybody. Montez Sweat's slumping. That said, you absolutely trot Young out there, and you trot John Allen out there too, because he continues to be a good player. And the other guys are more Sweat. I'm in a league where I got Sweat, and I kind of got to play him. It's hard not to. He's getting a full load of snaps. This is a team that isn't a strong opponent there. They're playing. I mean, Garrett Bowles is the left tackle. I think that Young is the right end. Sweat is the left end, if I recall correctly, primarily. And so I think I'd go ahead and comfortable starting Sweat. I don't love it, but the Broncos aren't scaring anybody.
All right, Tampa Bay is visiting the Saints. Bucs have given up the third fewest sacks. Now, I know we talked earlier about not starting anybody, but Marcus Davenport is emerging from the IR. Is he somebody who we start no matter what?
No. He's got the stock value and draft pick value, whatever they paid out the rear end to draft this guy, but he is not amounted to anything so far. He's not stayed on the field. They're just avoid him. I can tell you right now, you just want to pretty much avoid every Saints offensive line this week when it comes to playing the Tampa Bay, including, like I mentioned before, Jordan Cameron.
Or Cameron Jordan.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, him too.
The Browns tight end could be a good matchup here. You never know.
Hey, weirder things have happened. Sunday night, we have the Cowboys versus the Vikings. Now, Dallas is leading the NFC East. The Vikings are rebounding from a tough start with 2 straight wins. Both teams are fresh coming off a bye. Who are we playing in this matchup? Tripp.
Oh, man, I'm loading up with tacklers. This looks like a track meet type of game. Both these teams are playing high pace. They're scoring points, and I'm getting them out there. So the thing about the tackler situation here, it's a little weird, right? Because you got Anthony Barr, who's never an efficient player, but in this one, I'd go ahead and trot him out there. I mean, you obviously play Kendricks, of course. Parsons is a good start. Some people may not like Parsons for sure. I'm comfortable getting him out there every week. But if you're not comfortable with him, this is the week to be comfortable with him. He'll do it. And then the other thing is the safeties. That you got Jaron Kearse, who's kind of come out of nowhere this year. I mean, he got cut by the Lions last year. I mean, think about that. The Lions are horrendous, and they cut a guy, and the guy is now playing well in Dallas's defense. It's like, what is going on? But I think he's worth a look this week. And then you got Harrison Smith, who we know is a good player. I think people might have forgotten, but he's still a good player. So you get him out there. And if you're super desperate deep leagues, I mean, maybe you give a guy like Keanu Neal a try. I don't know. Sometimes I think he should just be cut from rosters, and other times when I'm not too sure.
I got one for you. Xavier Woods. He's going back to Dallas. It's a revenge game. Dallas allows a lot of points to the safeties, and they like to throw the ball. Xavier Woods is going to ball out this week. I'm going to give him at least a 7 to 8 tackle window, combined tackle window. You might even get you a pass defended. Never know. You might have a real revenge game, end up with an interception. But I actually have him in play in a few leagues. I went out of my way to get this because I like this, love this matchup for him.
All right, finishing off on Monday night, we have the G-Men visiting the Chiefs. KC hopes to right the ship out against the moribund Giants in the Big Red redemption game. Now, Giants have lost Peppers for the year. Is Xavier McKinney the biggest beneficiary of this loss, Gary?
I don't see how it can't be. I don't think there's anybody, at least currently on the roster, that's going to be probably moving up in the box. I mean, Jordan Love is the third guy that got some plays. He's kind of a smallish dude for a free safety type. We might actually see Logan Ryan move and let some Jordan Love take his position a little bit in that scheme. I don't know. The only one that I'm keeping going, you go ahead and feel safe with Brian Logan, but McKinney should get a nice solid boost. I think this will help his consistency because he was already doing all right. So his consistency should, maintain for the rest of the year and be a viable play.
Are you on board, Tripp?
I worry about McKinney just being the deep guy. I mean, I think last week he was primarily the deep guy, and Logan Ryan was playing more of a variety of spots in the safety role. And so, Julian Love is the guy that makes sense to come on the field with Peppers out. And Julian Love is certainly not a box safety. So does that mean there will be more of a kind of equal sharing of some of those roles close to the line of scrimmage? It's possible. If McKinney can play close to the line of scrimmage, then he could be interesting. If he's just a pure deep safety guy, then they play a lot of single high in New York, and it's just that guy is super deep and not involved in the action. And it's hard to get excited about McKinney. We got to watch this game and see what happens. The other wrinkle, of course, is that we're talking about a game against the Chiefs. I'm really interested to see if the Giants do what a lot of the other teams that play the Chiefs do, which is play mostly too high. And if it might not even be a good gauge of how they utilize these guys going forward because of the necessity to play conservatively against the Chiefs offense. So it's a sticky situation. I wouldn't be starting any of those. Well, Logan Ryan probably got to start. He's a high scorer, but you don't want to start McKinney if you can help it, my opinion. You got to see how they use him and what to make of it because he's just played too much deep. And that may continue to be the case this week. So I'm not eager to try him out there.
All right, gentlemen. Well, that is the full slate for this week. Time for final thoughts. You can find Tripp at Dynasty Tripp on Twitter. His work is at dynastyfootballfactory.com. Tripp, any final thoughts?
I wish everybody a happy Halloween and go out there, be safe, keep those kids safe on the streets and enjoy yourselves. And we got that football and Halloween and trick-or-treating on the same day.
Now, finally, the OG of IDP can be found at the IDP Tipster on Twitter and subscribe to Gridiron Ratings for all of his IDP analysis. Gary, any final thoughts?
I just hope everybody has a good weekend. I think we, after last week, it was kind of uptight. And I think this is going to be a nice weekend. We might have some normalcy return for at least one weekend's worth of play, whatever that normalcy would be.
I'm hoping for it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm at JJ Wenner on Twitter. Thank you to Tripp and Gary for joining me as always. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. And make sure you tune into our IDP First Take, hosted by Craig Reith and the crew. And remember, your path to the title starts with Gridiron Ratings. Good night, everyone.